Waterboarding. The body does not care what the mind knows. Strap someone to a board, cover their face with cloth, and pour water over it. And regardless of what they intellectually understand about the situation, every drowning instinct in the human body activates simultaneously. The panic is physiological, not psychological, which is what makes it nearly impossible to resist. Christopher Hitchens voluntarily underwent it for a journalism piece and lasted 17 seconds. The United States used it on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 183 times following September 11th. The Senate Intelligence Committee concluded in 2014 that it produced little actionable intelligence. The debate about whether it legally constitutes torture has never been formally resolved by an American court. Sensory deprivation removes light, sound, human contact, and any reliable sense of time, and within days the brain begins generating its own reality. Hallucinations emerge. The ability to distinguish memory from imagination deteriorates. The sense of self begins to fracture. The British used sensory deprivation combined with stress positions, white noise, sleep deprivation, and food restriction on Irish Republican suspects in 1971 in what became known as the Five Techniques. The European Court of Human Rights ruled it constituted inhuman and degrading treatment. Britain argued it was not torture. The distinction between those two positions has defined the legal architecture of enhanced interrogation ever since. Stress positions. Stress positions require no equipment, leave minimal visible marks, and produce excruciating pain through nothing more than the body's own weight working against itself. Forcing someone to stand with arms raised, kneel on hard floors, or crouch in a half-seated position for hours causes muscle failure, joint damage, and circulatory problems that compound rapidly over time. The CIA's post-September 11th detention program documented stress positions as a standard technique applied across multiple black site facilities. Former detainees described being held in painful positions for periods exceeding 20 hours. The damage accumulates invisibly. No bruising, no external wounds, which made it a preferred method for government seeking plausible deniability about the treatment of prisoners. Sleep deprivation. The human brain begins deteriorating measurably after 24 hours without sleep. After 72 hours, hallucinations begin. After longer periods, the line between waking reality and dreaming collapses entirely. Sleep deprivation has been used as an interrogation tool by virtually every government that has conducted enhanced interrogation in the modern era. The CIA, the KGB, Chinese intelligence, Israeli security services, because it requires no physical contact and produces a subject whose cognitive defenses are systematically dismantled over time. The subject becomes suggestible, confused, desperate to end the experience through any means available, including confession. The American military's SERE program, designed to teach soldiers to resist interrogation, identified sleep deprivation as the single most effective tool in the interrogator's arsenal. Isolation. Placing a human being in complete isolation, no human contact, no conversation, no shared meals, no communal activity, produces psychological deterioration that courts in multiple countries have ruled constitutes torture when sustained over sufficient periods. The United States Federal Supermax Prison, ADX, Florence holds inmates in 23-hour daily isolation, a condition that former inmates and psychiatric experts have described as producing permanent psychological damage. Guantanamo Bay detention operations included extended solitary confinement as standard procedure. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture has stated that solitary confinement exceeding 15 days constitutes cruel and inhuman treatment under international law. Most governments that use it extensively disagree with that assessment. Forced standing, known in Russian as stoika, a technique refined by the Soviet secret police, involves compelling a subject to remain upright and motionless for extended periods, sometimes days. The feet swell. Circulation to the lower extremities becomes dangerously compromised. The pain becomes so consuming that maintaining any coherent thought beyond the immediate physical experience becomes impossible. The KGB used it routinely during Stalin's purges as a precursor to formal interrogation, breaking down psychological resistance before questioning even began. The technique spread through Soviet client states and has been documented in use across Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East by governments trained directly or indirectly by Soviet intelligence advisors. Mock execution. The mock execution exploits the most fundamental human fear without causing physical harm, making it one of the cleanest psychological torture methods ever developed. A blindfolded prisoner is told they are about to be executed. They hear the preparation, the countdown, the gunshot fired into the air or at the ground nearby. They experience every physiological and psychological response to imminent death. Then nothing happens. The process may be repeated multiple times across multiple sessions, each time resetting the psychological damage without allowing recovery. Survivors of mock executions describe the experience as permanently altering their relationship with fear, the brain having processed actual death so completely that ordinary anxiety never registers the same way again. The technique has been documented in use by regimes across Latin America, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia throughout the 20th century. Electric shock. Electric shock torture requires minimal equipment, produces immediate and intense pain, leaves marks that fade relatively quickly, and can be calibrated to produce suffering without killing, which made it the preferred method of numerous authoritarian regimes throughout the 20th century. Argentina's military junta used electric shock systematically on political prisoners during the dirty war of the 1970s and 1980s, applying current through a device called the picana to the most sensitive areas of the body. An estimated 30,000 people were tortured and killed during that period. Chile under Pinochet documented similar practices. Brazil's military dictatorship used electric shock so extensively that it became the subject of formal testimony during the country's post-dictatorship Truth Commission. The technique spread through Latin America, partly through training programs the United States provided to Allied military regimes during the Cold War, a documented history that American governments spent decades attempting to minimize. Falaka. Falaka, beating the soles of the feet, is one of the oldest documented torture methods in recorded history, and one of the most widely used across the broadest geographic range. It appears in records from ancient Persia, Ottoman judicial practice, and 20th century authoritarian governments across the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia. The technique is methodically effective because the feet contain an extraordinary concentration of nerve endings. The pain is immediately overwhelming, and the damage, while genuine and sometimes permanent, is largely invisible beneath clothing. Walking becomes agonizing for weeks or months. The subject cannot run, cannot stand comfortably, cannot forget what was done to them with every step they take. Amnesty International has documented falaka in use in Turkey, Iran, Egypt, Syria, and numerous other countries in the modern era, consistently describing it as one of the most commonly encountered torture methods, in their case, documentation globally. Enhanced interrogation programs. The phrase enhanced interrogation was introduced into American political and legal discourse after September 11th as a deliberate euphemism, a linguistic construction designed to create distance between what was being described and the word torture, which carried specific legal prohibitions under domestic and international law. The CIA's Enhanced Interrogation Program, documented in the 2014 Senate Intelligence Committee report across thousands of pages, included waterboarding, sleep deprivation up to 180 hours, confinement in small boxes, rectal feeding without medical necessity, and techniques that the report's authors described as far more brutal than what had been disclosed to congressional overseers. The report concluded that the program produced no unique intelligence that could not have been obtained through other means. The Justice Department lawyers who wrote the legal memos authorizing the program were never prosecuted. The CIA officers who carried it out were never charged. The program was officially ended by executive order in 2009 and quietly studied by every intelligence agency in the world that conducts interrogations. So if you made it this far, drop a comment below and let us know which method you want us to cover next. Subscribe so you never miss an upload. There's a lot more where this came from.